Hey, welcome. Today, we're going to have a look at Sleepy Warrior. His video on the atmosphere is fake. He kicks off with equivalence. Let's see what he's got to say about equivalence.
If you're honest about it, this discussion, the flat earth discussion, is basically an argument of equivalence. One side, it's a ball. The other side, it's not a ball. The equivalence principle is that you can see it one way and you can also see it the other way.
No, I don't think you understand what equivalence is. What about we break it down into a concrete example for you? Let's look at two different things. A sphere, okay? And a flat piece of card. Okay, there is some equivalence between these, but when we look at it that way, there's not a lot at all. So in describing this as with describing this, it's going to be a lot different, because this is fundamentally 3D and this one is only 2D. Well, it might be good to compare this sheet of paper with this piece of card, and then there could be some equivalence. I'm going to get better equivalence of this with not this, but with the globe behind me. So if we were to look at the globe, and we were to look at my little tiny spherical PVC ball, there is some equivalence with these. Now I could take that further if I cleverly folded up my piece of paper, and here's one I prepared earlier, and made a cube out of it. We could then say there's an equivalence between these two. Because this one's 3D and this one's 3D, we could make comparisons and work out volumes and that kind of thing. What you're doing here is equivocation, which is comparing two opposite things, which leads to confusion. Ironically, it wouldn't be honest to say these have some equivalence.
If you're intellectually honest with yourself, you'll realise that this is what this topic is. It is a discussion of equivalence. It's intellectual. You do have to have a certain amount of critical thought.
Brief. Your critical thought is a bit like a baking competition. Have a look and see who's got the best cake. I mean, let's face it. Oh no, that cake's a bit flat. That one's round. But I like mine flat and chewy. No, you're not Mary Berry looking at a cake. When it says intellectual, it means somebody knows what they're talking about and the principles that are involved. And let's talk about things you have no idea about. Let's jump on to Einstein, shall we?
And for me, it's always been gravity. The minute Einstein said gravity was an effect, then that changes everything for me. That was like the strongest one.
You're being funny there. Actually, gravity is one of the weaker forces. Now, ironically, the thing that you don't like, which is weight, gravity comes from the word gravis, which means in Latin to be heavy. So things were heavy because they had this force working on them. Well, they have a force working on them because it's pulling them towards the centre of the earth. Okay, there's another force that isn't a real force. It's centripetal force. As you turn in a circle at a continuous speed, or even accelerating around a corner, you're going to feel a force against you, pushing you towards the centre of the circle. This isn't actually a real force, it's just your inertia trying to keep you going in a straight line. So you finished misunderstanding Einstein and relativity. Some more evidence to prove that you're a Muppet, please?
This is probably the most easy to understand, obvious to contrast.
Here we go. We're going to get some real compare and contrast. Some real critical thinking here. You being an intellectual.
Let's talk about the fraud that is atmospheric pressure.
Do you actually stop and listen to yourself talking? So the pressure that pushes down on your lungs and deflates them, that you have to push against as you breathe in to suck oxygen into your lungs, the pressure that's all around us, the pressure that reduces as we go up a mountain and gets higher as we go down towards sea level, that pressure, the pressure we're all deluded about.
Okay, so let's have a little look at what gas laws are.
No, stop. You've got a high level of Dunning-Kruger. This isn't wise. Just don't go there, Riley. You're going to make yourself look like a Muppet.
Get you to understand a little bit about how these things work. It's not easy. what we need to understand is there are 4 factors that influence what happens with gas and how gas behaves.
This is above your pay grade. Step back or you're going to get hurt.
They talk about the ideal gas law because there is no ideal gas. They just give it as a template that overlays the way that gas behaves. And when you realise that this doesn't actually exist, it's just the basic position so that you have a template in your mind to understand what's really going on.
Damn, the stupid is strong in this one. Okay, Riley, the thing you don't get is that we construct models or theories to model the world. What we're looking at here is an ideal gas.
Then this makes a lot of sense. Now this pervades real world. This is real physics, okay? And the Earth is not. It's not a case of special pleading. If you think it is, then that's the crossover between being physics based, real world based, and working at the not really is level. We're working at the really is level, not the not really is level. George Musa.
So I'm guessing you think George Musa is going to suggest there's no gravity. You're deluded.
So let's have a look. It says the ideal gases. The ideal gas, or perfect gas, is the theoretical substance that helps establish the relationship of 4 gas variables.
Right, I'm not going to bore you with the rest of it. Riley goes on to great detail explaining what an ideal gas is. Thanks very much for that, Riley. And then he does exactly what he says we shouldn't do. Having quoted George Musa and saying at the really, really level and not at the pretend level, he then goes on to commit a logical fallacy by imagining an infinitely large container with an infinitely large volume. Sleeping warrior, would you stop being a muppet?
What happens if we multiply by infinity? If any number is multiplied by infinity, then what will be the answer? Infinity means a number still larger than whatever we can think of. It is therefore obvious.
Oh my gosh. Ow. I didn't know stupid could be so painful. Oh, why do I do this? Why? This really hurts.
Bear that in mind because they tell us that space is an infinite vacuum. So straight away, if the volume is infinite and you're dividing, multiplying by infinity, the volume being infinite, we're going to see what happens when we play around with a gas simulator.
Okay, Riley, what you're doing now is equivocation. Okay, another fallacy. You can't equate gas in a container with gas in the atmosphere. It's completely different things. So you can't suddenly start imagining an infinitely large container and then put in a finite amount of gas in it. It's just ridiculous. I just don't know what you're thinking about.
And this is demonstrating the relationship between the 4 factors that we just looked at. So we've got pressure, volume, the amount of gas, and temperature. If you have a nice handy simulator that you can play around with, you can see that obviously there is a container.
Of course there's a container, because it's a simulator of gas in a container. I don't know what you're doing. It's absolutely ridiculous. I don't know if I can handle much more of this.
And we can play around with all the variables. Oh, and heat. We can play around with the heat. This is the actual simulation of pressure, volume, gas, temperature. And you can play around with it.
Riley, it's like watching a child play with a gun. I mean, actually, put that toy down. Stop playing with it. You're going to hurt somebody with it. I told you, somebody's going to get hurt. Look what happened. You start playing with the vacuum of space. Look what you do to people. Energy, Riley, is what's in that system. If you put more heat into it, you increase the energy, which increases the temperature. The temperature is a measure of the average amount of energy in the whole system. And this is a closed system. Yep, you're messing around with a closed system here, Riley. Not an infinite system, because with an infinite system, you would have the temperature varying across parts of it, depending on where heat is applied and how it moves around, convection, all kinds of different things. So, Riley, you're doing it again. You are absolutely making a fool of yourself. You are a muppet.
This is why I say it doesn't matter what these values are. They're relative to each other. They're relative numbers.
Right, here we go again. A good case of cherry picking. Riley, don't do it. It's not big, it's not grown up, it's not clever. You're a muppet.
So it doesn't matter what the scales are. It doesn't matter whether they're realistic or not. They're relative numbers.
Right, Riley. No, they're not relative, they're proportional. As you adjust one, the other one changes proportionally. Anyway, carry on.
If you understand how relative numbers works, then you'll understand that these values are pretty much meaningless. They relate to each other. They don't relate to an absolute position.
Look, I told you once already, it's proportional, not relative. They're proportional to each other. And no, you don't understand how relative numbers work. They're not, auntie and uncle and mother and father. What are you talking about?
Bear in mind that they tell us we live on an Earth that is infinitely in the vacuum of space, right? This would be the Earth's atmosphere that we're breathing, right? But it's got to be contained, which is our point, right?
Goodness, Riley, you're like a dog with a bone. No, it's not anything like the Earth. There isn't a dome over the top. It's not an enclosed space. Honestly, that was really stressful. I usually really enjoy these, but actually debunking Riley's quite stressful. He really kind of, I hope you enjoyed that a little bit more than I did. Next time, we will be finishing off Riley's video. The link to him is down below. Have a look at the video. You can watch the end of it if you like, if you can get through it without wanting to smack your head against the wall. I'll be finishing it off. He thinks the atmosphere is full of methane, and I don't know. We'll come back to it next week. Maybe I'll take something to keep me smiling while I do the next video. Well, thanks for watching that. Thank you for getting to the end. Consider us a subscribe if you enjoyed that video, and don't forget to like it. See you next time. Bye.